The story starts with a girl being attacked by some monsters, but a boy comes just in time to protect the scared girl. Years later, we see a girl asking our protagonist if he wants to team up with her. Everyone in the guild is surprised to hear her proposal, and the protagonist asks her to repeat herself. In reply, she points out that the card in his hand says that he is recruiting, and she asks him to let her join his party. She introduces herself as Narusena, and she is a martial artist. In turn, the protagonist tells her that his name is Raust, and he is a healer. The guild receptionist then butts into their conversation. She takes Narusena aside to tell her that her name is Amidst, and she reveals that the man Narusena was talking to is known as incompetent Raust. While he may be a healer, he only knows the beginner spell called heal. Amidst explains that Raust grew up as an adventurer ever since he was a child, no different from all other labyrinth orphans. Even after years of being an adventurer, he hasn't been able to master any other healing spells. A normal heal, and he is the ultimate loser. A little while ago, he was a member of a party called Lightning Sword, but he was recently kicked out of it because he couldn't use detoxification magic. Everyone in the town is aware of his incompetence, and this is why no one invites him to join their party. She mentions that he also doesn't have much money, so if she teams up with him, she might end up too poor to even afford good accommodation. Narusena tells Amidst not to worry as she shows her the pouch full of money she has. Amidst quickly corners her, telling her to be careful with that as there are a lot of unsavory adventurers in this town. Narusena gleefully thanks Amidst for the reminder. Seeing this, the receptionist realizes that Narusena must have become an adventurer recently. She then offers to introduce her to a good party but mentions that it's going to cost her if she wants mediation. Narusena passes on this, saying that she has wanted to team up with Raust for a long time. She goes to Raust, and Amidst then wonders what Narusena meant by wanting to team up with him for a long time. The two of them are then given a party application form. Amidst explains to them that they can't take on missions if they don't submit one of these. She adds that the form can also help the guild mediate if a dispute arises due to unequal distribution of commission. Raust then fills out the form, and Narusena is happy that she finally got to meet him again. She signs the form as well, and Raust pays the receptionist her handling fee. This makes him and Narusena an official party, and she is happy to finally be part of it. They then walk around the city, and Raust tells her that nobody has yet been able to explore the deepest part of the Marmot labyrinth. Because of this, no one knows what kind of monster is the master of the labyrinth. There are a lot of unknowns, and this has led Marmot to become the largest labyrinth city. They then head to the labyrinth, and Narusena wonders if it's okay for them to head straight there as they are a newly formed party. She remembers that Amidst advised them to head to the grasslands in the west. Raust explains that because the labyrinth leaks magic power around Marmot, there are a few places where monsters appear. Among these places in all four directions, the grasslands in the west only have weak monsters, making it the best place for beginners. However, it's a vast region, and there aren't many monsters to encounter. Unlike that place, the labyrinth has a number of monsters, and they won't encounter anything powerful if they don't go too deep. Narusena understands, and they continue toward the labyrinth. Once at the entrance, Narusena offers to take the lead since Raust is a healer, and his rightful place is at the back. Raust agrees, and they head into the labyrinth. Once inside, he notices that Narusena is really motivated, and he thinks it's a good thing, but he wonders if she can really fight. They then encounter some monsters, and Narusena surprisingly wipes the floor with them without Raust having to lift a finger. Raust picks up the magic stone dropped by one of the monsters and tells Narusena that most adventurers make a living by selling these to the guild. Narusena curiously wonders why the guild buys these things. Raust explains that inside these magic stones resides magic power, and they are also versatile. He thinks she should know something this basic since she is an adventurer, but Narusena mentions that she is not very good at studying. They then collect all the magic stones, and Narusena wonders how much they are going to get for them. Raust says they won't be getting much since goblin magic stones don't have a high value. They would have to defeat more powerful monsters to get stones with higher value. However, this will be enough to cover the cost of today's accommodation. He asks if she still wants to head deeper, and she states that she does. She tells him that she will protect him if they encounter any danger, so he can rest assured. Raust is relieved to hear this, and when they get deeper into the labyrinth, he stops Narusena from stepping on a trap. He shows her the trap by activating it with a stone, and she wonders how he knew about it. Raust mentions that it's because the color of the floor is a bit different there, and they carefully cross the trap. Narusena states that detecting traps is supposed to be the job of a thief, but he is a healer. He explains that he has been working for a long time and has developed all sorts of skills. They then encounter a half-orc, and Raust is surprised to see such a monster on one of the upper floors. Narusena wonders what's so weird about this, and Raust explains that these monsters are known as mid-level demons. Their robust bodies and strength are equal to the monsters on the lower levels of the labyrinth, making them hard to defeat. Narusena wonders if they should run away in this case, but Raust states that they should be able to defeat it if they work together. She agrees and uses her martial arts skills to attack the monster but finds that its body is as hard as a rock. She notices, however, that it's not very fast, so she can easily dodge its attacks. Despite this, the monster manages to scrape her a bit, leaving her open for its next attack. The monster tries to finish her off with a powerful move, but Raust defeats it with a single blow, saving Narusena in the process. He then asks her if she is hurt, and she surprisingly wonders if he is really a healer. He tells her that, over the years, he has picked up some close combat techniques. She compliments the move he used to defeat the half-orc. Raust notices the scrape on her arm, and though she says it will heal in no time, he insists on healing her using his magic. They then notice the magic stone left by the orc and are surprised to see how much larger it is than the goblins' stones. Raust thinks it has more magic power and is sure it will fetch a good price. He asks Narusena if she wants to go even deeper or if they should head back, as they've already gained enough for the day. Narusena says she is still ready to fight. They then hunt some more monsters before returning to the guild with the magic stones. Upon seeing the number of stones, Amidst can't believe they managed to defeat so many monsters in just half a day. When she notices the large crystal, she realizes they went to the labyrinth. She wonders if they reached the middle levels, given they have a half-orc's magic stone. Raust clarifies that they didn't, explaining the half-orc was wandering on the upper level. Narusena confirms this and mentions she wanted to go deeper, but Raust refused. Amidst understands and Raust wonders if she believes him. She assures him she does, explaining that the guild has recently received similar reports. She mentions that the higher-ups have been busy and that something seems to have happened in the labyrinth. Raust inquires further, but Amidst admits she doesn't know the details. She purchases the magic stones and seems happy doing so. Narusena asks why, and Raust explains that guild employees receive a pay raise when they buy magic stones. From adventurers, Amidst states that this means she'll earn more if they bring her more stones. She encourages Narusena to work hard. Raust collects their payment and is surprised by the amount. Amidst advises him to split it with Narusena, and Raust remarks that even after splitting, it's 10 times more than he has ever earned. He realizes he wasn't paid fairly in his last party, which makes him feel depressed. Narusena can't believe this and reminds Amidst that she promised to mediate if there was ever a dispute over unequal distribution of commission. Amidst says she will, but only if they pay the fee. When asked, Raust decides to let the matter go, wanting to move on since he has a new party now. As they leave, another guild employee, Hans, notices them. He asks Amidst if she helped Raust find a new party member. Amidst explains she couldn't even if she wanted to, as no party wants someone as incompetent as Raust. However, a girl insisted on teaming up with him. Hans realizes it was the blue-haired girl he just saw and leaves. The scene then cuts to Raust and Narusena at an inn. A young girl working there notices Raust's new party member. Surprised, Raust asks how she already knows, and she explains that rumors are flying everywhere. She asks if they're there to dine, and Raust says yes, but he'd also like to book a room. The girl teases them, asking if they want to book a single room. Narusena blushes, but Raust calmly asks her not to tease and says they'll stay in separate rooms. The girl shows them the available rooms on the empty second floor, hoping they'll eat something as they must be tired. Narusena thinks to herself that it wouldn't have mattered if they shared a room. After eating, they head to their separate rooms. Narusena lies on her bed and recalls the time Raust healed her after she was attacked by monsters in the past. She had thanked him and told him she would become an adventurer when she grew up and team up with him. She reflects on how she has been training ever since. When she heard Raust had been kicked out of his party, she rushed to the town immediately. She is glad they were able to form a party and defeat monsters together, but she feels sad that he didn't recognize her. She understands, though, since she has grown up and even her hair color has changed. She realizes Raust has grown stronger and might not need her protection anymore. Shaking off her doubts, she resolves not to let her ambitions waver. Donning her pajamas, she wonders why the people in the town think Raust is incompetent when he is so strong. The story then goes to the past, and we see Raust fighting a hydra along with his previous party. We notice that they are not doing well, and the thief of their party is hurt. Raust heals her. The thief asks him if his heal spell is able to cure poisons, and he mentions that it is not. However, he explains that if he can help her recover her physical strength, she will be able to counteract the poison on her own. The thief complains about this, and the leader asks them to quit complaining and help him out. As soon as they are done with the treatment, the thief tells the leader that she is in no condition to fight. The leader asks Raust to take care of her. Raust reminds him that he had told him to bring some antidote along, but we find out that the leader was too stingy to buy them as they cost a lot. The leader then blames Raust, saying it's all his fault since he can only use the heal spell despite being a healer. He then asks the scared Armia, the magician, to cast her spells on the monster. She snaps out of her daze and fires a fireball at it, but it has no effect. The leader then thinks that every one of his party members is pathetic. Realizing that they can't handle this quest, he runs away, telling everyone to retreat. Armia follows after him, and Raust supports Siberia in escaping the Hydra by giving her a shoulder. The next day, Raust is blamed for the failure of their mission, and he is kicked out of the party. He is surprised to hear this, and Siberia tells him that it's all because they were unable to defeat the Hydra because of him. However, Raust counters by saying that they failed because the two of them were so excited that they stayed up until dawn, which left them unable to perform at their best. The leader wonders if Raust is blaming them, but Raust states that he is not. They decide to ask Zia, who is also blamed for their failure. The leader intimidates her, and she is unable to defy him, so she blames Raust for the entire mess. We then find out that Raust was dreaming about the past, and he wakes up. He thinks that this incident might have bothered him a lot more than he expected if he is dreaming about it. He drinks some water and reflects, realizing that something similar had happened before. He remembers that it was 6 years ago. Back then, he was already well known as an ignoramus, but he still wanted to become a first-rate adventurer. This is when a certain party reached out to him, and he jumped at the chance to join them. However, they didn't plan on using him as a healer. Instead, they threw him in front of the monsters as bait. Raust ran away from the monsters, dodging their attacks, and thought to himself that he was used to being treated this way as he was a labyrinth orphan. Yet, it still bothered him. When the monsters grew bored of him, they turned their attention to his party and killed all of them. Raust somehow managed to escape, but he couldn't shake the feeling of resentment that no one would treat him as a real adventurer. This was when he saw a group of goblins attacking a carriage. Inside, he found a girl hiding from the monsters. Even he wasn't sure why he decided to save her back then, but he fought the monsters to protect her. He thought he might be able to trade his worthless life to save the girl, making his death meaningful. However, the monsters knocked him out. When he regained consciousness, he saw the girl in front of him. She was relieved to see him awake. Raust learned that the Order of the Knights had come to save her just in time. He felt like a failure for being unable to protect a single person, calling himself an ignoramus. Yet, the girl thanked him and explained that the knights only arrived in time because he had helped her. She mentioned that he looked cool while fighting. Noticing she was hurt, Raust quickly used his heal spell on her. The girl thanked him again, but Raust lamented that healing was all he could do. He told her about his party's betrayal, and the girl was heartbroken to hear that he had been treated as a living bait. She started crying for him and made a decision. She promised to become an adventurer when she grew up, vowing to join his party and protect him. Raust was touched by her words, though he doubted she could become an adventurer since she seemed to be from a noble family. He was under no illusions of forming a party with her one day. Nonetheless, her words gave him courage. Determined to try being an adventurer again, Raust sought out mentors to train him in swordplay and magic. While he remained limited to using his heal spell as a healer, he mastered many other skills. After completing his training, he finally joined a new party, the Blades of Lightning. Reflecting on this dream, Raust realized that he wouldn't be where he was now if not for the girl's words. He also understood that quitting adventuring back then would have meant never meeting her again. At this moment, Narusena knocked on his door, asking if he wanted to have breakfast together. He agreed, and the scene shifted to the two of them sharing a meal. The story then cut to them inside the labyrinth. Raust announced that they would head to the lower levels that day. Soon after, they reached a labyrinth floor with a teleportation circle. Narusena mentioned that she had never seen one before. Raust explained that such circles weren't present in every labyrinth. This one, he said, had been placed here by a magician shortly after the labyrinth was discovered. However, he admitted he didn't know much about it beyond that. Narusena was excited about the circle, thinking it could let them move anywhere. Raust clarified that they would need another teleportation circle to exit from, explaining that these circles only linked to other similar ones. Narusena mused that things would be much easier if the city had its own teleportation circle. However, she speculated that it might not be feasible since it could lead to monsters swarming the city. Raust disagreed, saying it could have been made safe if done properly. As they cannot be used by monsters, Raust explains, the knowledge to create these teleportation circles was lost hundreds of years ago, and there is no way to make new ones. They then use the teleportation circle to head to the middle levels. Raust warns Narusena that the monsters here are stronger than the ones they fought the other day and asks her to be careful. The scene shifts to them battling monsters. Raust defeats his share, but when Narusena attacks one, her punch slides right through its body. Raust informs her that this is a lich, a monster of pure spirit energy, and that physical attacks won't work against it. Narusena agrees, realizing she can see through its body. Raust suggests retreating, as they're at a disadvantage without magic. However, Narusena insists she can defeat it. Raust, understanding her intent, begins drawing the Lish's attention while Narina hides to prepare her attack. While running, Raust explains that with enough training, people can control their prana, the spirit energy within their bodies, and use it to fight spiritual beings. Meanwhile, Narina infuses her fist with prana and lands a single, powerful punch that defeats the Lich. She celebrates her victory, but Raust notices she's injured. Realizing she likely got hurt while attacking the Lich, he uses a magic item to enhance his healing spell and heals her wound. Raust explains that the item contains a magic stone, which adventurers collect and give to the guild. The guild then hands the stones to craftsmen, who turn them into magic items and return them to adventurers. Once Narina is healed, she asks how much they could sell the magic stone for. Raust estimates it would fetch a good price. They sell the stone to Amidst, who pays them well. As they head back to the inn, Narina is surprised by how much they earned. On their way, they notice two adventurers bickering in the streets. Raust explains to Narina that such incidents have become common recently. He mentions that many adventurers, who have gotten into trouble elsewhere, have been gathering in this town. Narina recalls Amidst mentioning something similar, and they notice rough-looking adventurers all around the town. Raust laments that this has become a pain for respectable adventurers. However, he changes the subject, suggesting they get something fancy to eat with their earnings. The scene cuts to them enjoying a luxurious meal at the inn. The innkeeper nervously asks if they'll be able to pay for it all, and Raust assures her they will. He orders some ale, prompting Narina to do the same. However, she's denied, as she's too young to drink. Annoyed at being treated like a child, she sulks. After finishing their meal, Narina asks Raust about a strange-looking tower at the edge of town. She mentions she's seen similar structures all over the city but can't figure out what they are. Raust admits that he was curious too and once asked the builders about them. Surprisingly, even the builders didn't know who had commissioned the towers or why. Raust explains that the builders were contacted by an agent, who represented another agent, and so on, creating a long chain of intermediaries between the builders and the actual owner. Narina speculates that whoever wanted the towers built didn't want to be identified. Raust shrugs, saying it doesn't matter as long as it's not harming anyone, though it does highlight the strange people in this world. He then adds that it might have been better to build a wall around the city instead of those towers. Narina notes that the city doesn't have walls and comments that their absence makes the city feel more open and welcoming. Raust, however, points out that it could make the city vulnerable during wartime. He asks how they would stop invaders without a wall, but Narina confidently replies that there's no need to worry. She explains that the many adventurers in the city would protect it from any threat. Raust agrees with Narina, stating that she is right. The two of them then head to their rooms. Before Raust enters his room, Narina pauses, trying to say something. However, she can't summon the courage, and simply wishes him a good night. In her own room, Narina lies on her bed, thinking about how much she wishes she could stay in the same room as Raust. Yet, she feels too embarrassed to say it out loud. Meanwhile, Raust lies on his bed, reflecting on how great it feels to be in a party again. He wonders if he will ever run into the little girl who inspired him so many years ago, but he knows that, thanks to Narina, he can keep adventuring for a little while longer. The scene shifts to the Blades of Lightning, where their leader, Margulis, introduces a new healer, Lyra, to the party. Lyra is met with cold stares and dismissive attitudes from the other members, which unsettles her. Margulis, however, is confident that with Lyra's skills, they will finally be able to defeat the Hydra that had previously humiliated them. The scene cuts to an eerie place. Handsome informs someone that the sleeping princess is in this city and has formed a party with Raust, pretending to be an adventurer. The old man he is speaking to is surprised to hear that Raust is still in town and mentions that they need to find a way to get rid of him, as they are running out of time. Handsome agrees with him. The scene then shifts to Margulis and his party, who are preparing to face the Hydra once again. Margulis notices that the Hydra's head has not yet regenerated. He tells his party that he and Lyra will take on the Hydra and asks Armia to back them up with her magic. He orders Siberia to sneak around behind the creature to catch it off guard. Margulis then attempts to strike the Hydra, but Lyra stops him, telling him that she cannot go to the front lines. Margulis reveals that Raust had fought on the front lines with him, and Lyra is shocked that they forced a healer to fight. Margulis corrects her, explaining that they didn't force him, Raust was simply good at fighting. Siberia then adds that it was Raust who chopped off the Hydra's head. Margulis brushes off Lyra's hesitation, telling her that it's fine if she can't go to the front lines and asks her to stay behind and use antidote spells. Lyra agrees, and Margulis thinks that this time, they will surely defeat the Hydra. The scene then cuts to Raust receiving payment from Amidst for the magic stones he brought in today. Seeing the stones, Amidst realizes they ventured into the middle levels again. She hopes that Raust is not pushing Narina beyond her limits. Raust reassures her that he is being careful since their party is still small. Amherst expresses relief that they are being cautious but also mentions that with only 2 members, they may be limited in what they can accomplish. She suggests they recruit some new members to help. She is sure that it would be great if they could have a warrior or a mage around, as this way both she and the others would make more money. Raust thinks this sounds good, but he reminds her that it's not something they're thinking about for the time being. Amherst states that they're already earning quite a bit, and at this rate, they might even be able to rent a house. Narusena is confused to hear this, and Raust explains that parties with extra money can rent a private home and use it as their base of operations. Amherst elaborates further, saying that there's a limit to the number of items they can store at an inn, and the cost of renting rooms adds up significantly over time. Having a house can also help couples get more cozy, but looking at the 2 of them, Amherst doesn't think that will happen anytime soon. Narusena, not liking the sound of this, frowns. Raust recalls that the Blades of Lightning were also renting a private home. He remembers that his room there was only a closet. Amherst sympathizes with him, commenting that he was really abused by his former party. She adds that it's for the best that he was kicked out since the Blades of Lightning were recently defeated by the Hydra again. The scene then cuts to the private home of the Blades of Lightning. Margalis wonders why they can't just defeat the Hydra. Lyra replies that it's because he insists on attacking the monster head-on, even though he is not strong enough for this. Margalis bristles at her words, and Lyra tells him to be quiet so she can concentrate on healing Armia. She reassures Armia that she is going to be fine, and Armia thanks her. Margalis then turns to Siberia, wondering if perhaps Raust was actually helpful. Siberia agrees, noting that Raust always got the job done and didn't even complain when they shorted him on pay. Margalis, now angry, wonders why Raust had to quit the party. Siberia reminds him that it was Margalis who kicked him out. Margalis, thinking it should be easy to get Raust back, announces that he is just going to ask him to rejoin. He's confident that Raust will jump at the opportunity, but Siberia looks disappointed to hear this. The scene shifts again to later in the day, when Armia wakes up and notices Lyra sleeping at her bedside. She wakes her up, and Lyra is glad to see that Armia has healed. Lyra offers to bring something for Armia to eat. She tries to find Margalis and Siberia to help her, but she notices that they are not in the house, and she wonders where they could have gone. Later, we see Margalis at the guild, asking Raust to rejoin his party. Everyone in the guild is surprised to hear this. Raust asks him to repeat himself, and Margalis again offers for him to come back. Narusena, noticing this scene, turns to Amherst, who explains that the man talking to Raust is Margalis from the Blades of Lightning. Meanwhile, Raust shows no interest in rejoining the Blades of Lightning. Margalis, undeterred, says he knows it might be hard to keep up with someone as strong as him, but he makes a false promise to protect Raust by putting his neck on the line. Raust states that this isn't the problem. Margalis, thinking it might be about the money, offers to give Raust his fair share from now on, pretending that he wasn't aware that Raust wasn't getting enough compensation. He tells Raust that the new healer they recruited is a girl who is totally useless, and Siberia is sure that this isn't going to work out. Raust thanks Margalis for the offer, and Narusena thinks that Raust is going to rejoin his party. She intervenes, telling Margalis that he is never going back to his party, as he has become a valuable partner to her. Margalis thinks they should let Raust decide this for himself. Raust asks Narusena to calm down, revealing that he only thanked Margalis out of politeness and that he is not going to rejoin his party since he has his new companion now. Margalis, in desperation, asks him to think things through. He accuses Narusena of trying to use Raust, saying that she's realized how useful he is and must be cheating him out of his pay. He also accuses the guild of being in on it and says that Narusena will never truly be Raust's friend. This accusation makes Raust angry, and he grabs Margalis by the hand. He states that he has no grudge against him, but if he ever does anything to hurt Narusena, he will never forgive the Blades of Lightning. Narusena and Raust then leave the guild. Margalis angrily asks Amherst to introduce him to a new member who is a strong warrior. Amherst, clearly tired of introducing new members to him, sighs. Margalis mentions that they are surely going to defeat the Hydra this time around. He is then approached by a warrior who asks to join his party. Margalis decides to test his skills by sparring with him. Amherst warns that adventurers can't fight amongst themselves, but Margalis insists that it will only be a practice match. He charges at the warrior, but the warrior disarms him with no effort. The entire guild is surprised to see this, and Margalis is embarrassed to lose in front of such a big crowd. He pretends that he was holding back, but the adventurers still think he's nothing more than talk. Margalis, begrudgingly, decides to allow the warrior to join his party. Siberia wonders if they can really trust a man who hides his face. Margalis replies that they have no choice, as they need to defeat the Hydra or risk their reputation sinking. He then asks the warrior for his name, and the warrior introduces himself using the alias, Shig. The scene shifts to the inn, where Sheila knocks on Raust's door. Narusena wonders if Sheila is trying to make a move on Raust, but she's sure that won't happen. Sheila just tells Raust that someone is here to see him. She notices Narusena eavesdropping and invites her to join, as it might have something to do with her as well. The scene then cuts to Raust meeting his guests, Lyra and Armia. He asks what they want to talk about, and Armia explains that Margalis is going to hunt the Hydra again today. He's fired up after hiring a new warrior. Raust realizes that Margalis still hasn't learned his lesson but thinks that this could be a useful experience for him. Lyra is uncertain, stating that Margalis is still refusing to buy antidotes, and someone will probably get killed before he figures things out. Armia then admits that she's starting to realize how strong Raust really is. She says that if Raust hadn't cut off the Hydra's head, their entire party would have been annihilated. Raust isn't sure about this, but Lyra agrees, stating that there's no doubt about it. They are struggling against a Hydra that has lost 2 of its heads, and they would have surely died if it wasn't injured. Raust wonders what help they want from him. Armia tells him that the Hydra's wounds haven't healed yet, and if he's with them, they can surely defeat the beast. Raust realizes that she's asking him to rejoin the Blades of Lightning. He thinks that Margalis must not have told her what happened. Narusena asks why she wants to help that party, clearly frustrated. Armia responds that she knows Margalis has personal issues, listing a few of them angrily. However, she adds that he's still her party member. Narusena gets upset hearing this, as Raust was also part of her team, and she's sure that Armia knew how badly he was treated by the rest of his party. Armia apologizes, explaining that she didn't know what to do. She was scared that if she didn't do what she was told, she'd be kicked out of the party. She apologizes for her mistakes, stating that she hasn't been an adventurer for long and didn't know any other parties. She couldn't tell if Margalis was doing the right thing or not, but now she realizes he was wrong. The scene continues with Armia still unable to fully turn her back on her former companions in the Blades of Lightning. She cries as she expresses her inner conflict, but Lyra gently calms her down. Lyra turns to Raust and says she has been wanting to apologize to him for some time, understanding how he must feel. She asks him to at least accept her apology. Raust reassures Armia, telling her there's no need to cry. He mentions that he already told Margalis that he holds no grudge against their party. Armia thanks him for this, but Raust makes it clear that he has no intention of rejoining the Blades of Lightning, as he has already informed Margalis of his decision. Armia looks a little sad at this. The innkeeper arrives with food, noticing Armia's pale face and encouraging her to eat. As she eats, Raust quietly asks Lyra if she could get Armia to leave the Blades of Lightning and join them. Lyra responds that she would have already done so if she could, but she explains that Armia is a kind person. Raust remembers how Margalis had insulted Lyra in front of him, which made him feel sorry for her. He tells Lyra that she will have a hard time in that party. Lyra wonders if Raust is asking her to quit and leave Armia behind, but she firmly states that she can't do something like that. Raust understands her position. Lyra then returns to the private house of the Blades of Lightning, where she finds Shig there. She recognizes him immediately but is surprised to see him pretending to be someone else. Margalis corrects her, saying that the man's name is Shig, not Sig, and then leaves to prepare for the battle with the Hydra. Lyra asks Shig what he's doing there, but he pretends not to know her, although his acting is far from convincing. Lyra calls him out on his poor attempt at deception, but he insists on maintaining the charade. She wonders aloud if he took another terrible job, but he remains silent. Lyra then notices that Shig is carrying a sword that once belonged to Ronaldo, which catches her attention. She asks him if he stole it, but Shig claims that his mentor gave it to him. This confirms that he is actually Sig, but he still insists on pretending to be Shig. Lyra, slightly embarrassed, decides to let it go and leaves the house, blushing at the awkward situation. Meanwhile, outside the town, Raust and Narusena are traveling, and Raust worries about Armia and the others. The scene shifts to Margalis and his party, who are preparing to face the Hydra again. The Hydra's heads have still not regenerated, which surprises Margalis. It seems like this time they may have a better chance of defeating the beast. The scene continues with Narusena and Raust in the labyrinth. Narusena is effortlessly handling some monsters when one sneaks up behind her. Before it can attack, Raust swiftly steps in and compliments her fighting skills. Narusena brushes it off, claiming it was nothing, but her stomach growls loudly, signaling her hunger. Raust playfully remarks that while she might be tough, her stomach seems to have reached its limit. Embarrassed, Narusena shouts at him, but Raust suggests they stop for lunch. She agrees, and they sit down to eat their packed meal. As they eat, Raust is surprised by the amount of food, asking if there's a special occasion. Narusena explains that the innkeeper, Moray, gave it to her when she left, telling her she had to take responsibility for finishing it all since their little friend couldn't. Raust laughs, and they continue their meal. Raust then explains to Narusena the danger of the Hydra, a powerful and venomous creature whose scales make it resistant to physical and magical attacks. Narusena is shocked to hear just how strong it is and expresses concern for Armia and the others. Raust reassures her, explaining that the Hydra is easy to find among high-level beasts, and people have come up with various ways to deal with it. He mentions that although the Hydra's poison is fatal, a special antidote has been developed to counter it. Narusena recalls that Lyra had told her they didn't buy the antidote, and Raust reveals that it's expensive, so they're relying on Lyra's detoxification magic instead. Narusena remains worried, but Raust assures her that Blades of Lightning is still a competent group, even if Margalis sometimes acts foolishly. He notes that Margalis is a capable swordsman when it matters and that Siberia's agility makes her great for sneaking behind enemies despite the Hydra's wide range of vision. Narusena still isn't completely reassured, but she doesn't press further. After finishing their meal, they resume their adventure. Narusena suggests they try the wetlands today instead of continuing to explore the same labyrinth, and Raust, though surprised, agrees. The scene then shifts to Margalis and his party, deep in the fight with the Hydra. Margalis successfully injures one of its heads, and as the battle intensifies, he orders the party to chop off the Hydra's head. However, Shig, the new warrior, hesitates, halting his attack midway and retreating. Margalis is frustrated and asks why he held back. Shig responds that the Hydra should be his prey and asks if Margalis is willing to let him take the credit. Margalis is confused by this and wonders what Shig means. Shig explains that the title of Hydra Slayer would suit him, and with that, he charges at the creature. As Shig's attack falters, Lyra, who is healing Siberia, wonders why Margalis always insists on attacking the monster head-on. Siberia, still recovering, defends Margalis, saying there's a certain charm to it, though Lyra disagrees. After Siberia is healed, she goes to distract the Hydra, giving Margalis the opening to launch another attack. Armia provides magical support from the back, and Lyra, watching from the sidelines, thinks they have a good chance of winning, as long as they maintain their strategy. However, Lyra notices that Shig has paused, and she becomes concerned about his intentions. As the battle rages on, the Hydra retaliates by using its tail to hurl a large stone toward Armia. The stone strikes her, knocking her down. The Hydra moves in, preparing to strike, and in that moment, Armia faints from the sheer terror of the situation. Black smoke then starts oozing out of her unconscious body, and Siberia wonders what this is. Se explains that it's fear and mentions that the monsters feed on the fear of humans to turn it into their strength. He states that this kind of thing should not be visible to the human eye, and the Hydra starts sucking up fear from everything around it. Lyra notices that the fear is turning into mana, and Siberia wonders if mana is supposed to come out in places like these. Lyra explains that it doesn't, and normally it only comes out in the deepest part of the labyrinth. The Hydra then starts glowing after absorbing the mana, and Lyra realizes that it's going through a mutation. She explains that monsters can change their bodies by absorbing a lot of magic power, and sometimes it can improve their abilities by leaps and bounds. The Hydra then transforms into a much more powerful-looking creature, and Sig asks Lyra to take care of Armia. She agrees, and he asks Margalis to retreat, but he refuses since they worked hard to weaken this monster. He decides to at least take one of the Hydra's heads before he leaves, but his sword breaks when he attacks the Hydra, and the Hydra almost attacks him. However, Raust comes just in time to save him. Sig and Narusena then attack the Hydra together, and they manage to injure it, but not much. Se then tells Raust to go check up on Armia and leave the Hydra to him. He agrees and asks Lyra how Armia is. He finds out that she is not doing so good, and Lyra explains that her healing magic is not working, as Armia is a wizard, and wizards are resistant to magic. Raust then uses his heal on Armia, casting several layers of the spell on her. Lyra, confused, wonders what he is doing, and Siberia states that he is just overlaying heal, and this is how he always healed them. Lyra is astounded to hear that such a thing can work, and she mentions that drinking bottles of potions doesn't cure a cold right away, and this is the same thing, so it shouldn't be possible. Margalis is not sure what she is talking about, as he has never caught a cold, and this proves that idiots really don't catch a cold. Lyra is still surprised by the overlaying heal, and Armia wakes up after Raust is done healing her. She notices him and thanks him, and then she falls asleep. The Hydra then acts as if it wants to fight Raust, and Sig understands this. Raust wonders if this Hydra remembers who he is, and Narusena offers to help him out. Raust knows that she is not going to listen to him even if he stops her, so he agrees to take her help but asks her not to push herself and retreat if she is in danger. Sig then asks Lyra, Margalis, and Siberia to not go near the beast, and they agree. Afterwards, Narusena and Raust attack the monster, and Sig manages to cut off one of its heads. Margalis wonders why Say's sword didn't break, and Lyra explains that it's because he has a magic sword. Margalis has heard about them, as they are legendary swords with great power, and he can't believe that Sig has one of them, wondering who he really is. Afterwards, Narusena attacks the Hydra, but she loses her footing, and the Hydra flings her into the air. She falls on the ground unconscious, and Raust realizes that the Hydra wants to fight him one-on-one, and this is why it has taken Narusena as a hostage. Siberia wonders how a monster could be this smart, and Lyra states that it's possible, as mutated monsters have advanced intelligence. Raust then asks the others to not make a move while he heads to fight the Hydra, and moments later, we see that he has been defeated. Lyra asks him to get up, and he tries to grab a hold of his weapon once more, but he faints. Suddenly, something inside of him changes, and he begins to move. He gets up as a blue hue of power surrounds his body, and the others are bewildered to see this, wondering what's happening to him. Raust then surprisingly grows a horn and slashes up the Hydra like sushi. He then faints, and the scene cuts to him waking up as Narusena calls out his name. He is glad to see that she is alright, and she mentions that Lyra had brought an antidote in advance, so she is fine. Lyra states that it wasn't cheap, and she is going to charge them for it later. Raust then notices that Armia is still asleep, and he is glad to find out that there is no danger to her life. Lyra then asks him about his peculiar form earlier, but he has no idea what she is talking about. Margalis interrupts them, telling Raust that he is really strong, and with him around, even strong monsters are not going to be a match for them. They might even be able to take down the master of Mid-Labyrinth. Raust tries to remind Margalis that he refused to join his party, but Margalis tells him that he doesn't have to worry about the pay, as they got a lot of magic stones after defeating that Hydra. They can split it evenly between him, Siberia, and Raust. He states that the two newcomers are not going to get anything, as they did nothing, and since Narusena is just his sidekick, he should find an excuse to please her. Raust wonders what they are going to do about Armia, and Siberia states that she is of no use anymore. There is a chance that she might never wake up, and Margalis thinks that they should just sell her to some noble with pervy tastes. This makes Raust angry, but before he can do anything, Narusena punches Margalis, and he can't believe this. He reminds her that the guild forbids adventurers from fighting each other, and she could be expelled from the guild for breaking rules. He asks the others if they saw what she did, but they deny it. Siberia supports him, saying that she did see everything, and she will testify at the guild seat. Sig then recalls that he did see and hear something, and he mentions that someone was trying to sell Armia to a perverted noble before she regained consciousness. He states that this is a felony and they have to capture them. He asks them to come with him, and Margalis asks Sig who he really is. The scene then cuts to them at the guild, and we find out that Sig is a direct adventurer from the Royal City's Adventurer Guild. We see that he has tied Margalis and Siberia down. He introduces himself with his real name, Sig, instead of the earlier one, which was Shig. Lyra tells him that his disguise was full of flaws. Amidst then asks him why an adventurer from the capital city would come here, and he mentions that as a guild receptionist, she should be aware that direct adventurers have the authority to regulate other adventurers. He explains that the security of this town has been deteriorating recently, and he came in order to check things out. He immediately ran into Margalis's party, and Lyra wonders what's going to happen to the two of them now. Amidst mentions that they are going to be kicked out of the guild and might even be punished with a lifetime of labor for human trafficking. Margalis mentions that they only talked about it and never actually did it, but Amidst states that this is the law, and the two of them start blaming each other for the mess they're in. Raust then talks to Sig privately, and he asks him to spare Margalis and Siberia. Sig wonders why, and Raust mentions that they once aspired to be adventurers and have come so far because of this desire. At some point, their desire changed to becoming the best adventurer, and they began to crave fame and money. He is sure that they didn't start out like this, and he hopes that Sig will give them another chance. Margalis and Siberia hear this from inside and feel bad for their actions. Sig agrees to Raust's request. They free Margalis and Siberia. Sig then asks them to get far away from this town, and he hopes that they won't run into him again. They run away. Amidst then wonders if this is going to be all right, and Sig tells her that they might not have turned for the better if they were expelled from the guild. It's better for them to stay adventurers and be monitored by them. Amidst is not sure if this approach is going to work in their case, as unlike the capital, Marmot is a small city, and things are different here. Sig states that he will stay here for a while in this case, and Amidst is glad to hear this. Afterwards, Sig talks to Lyra at the inn, and he explains to her that he actually stayed behind to keep a watch on the adventurers of this town. He states that the guild in the royal city believes that the mutiny happening in this town might be the work of the Marmot division, and he asks her if she can form a party with him to help with this. She agrees, but only on the condition that he also lets Armia join up with them. Essie wonders why, and she states that she can't leave her behind like this. He agrees to let her join, as having more members is better for him, since he needs to monitor more people now, and he knows that he can't let Raust be unattended. The scene then cuts to Lyra and Sig informing Raust and Narusena that they have formed a party with Armia. Raust thinks that it's quite a good party as it has a healer, a saber, and a wizard. He asks Armia how she feels about this, and she mentions that she is fine with it as she doesn't have anywhere else to go. She states that Lyra has also saved her life, and she wishes to repay her. Lyra reveals that she told Armia not to worry about this, but she refused to listen to her. Sig states that this is why he thought that this would be a good idea. Raust then congratulates her on finding new party mates, and they ask her to do her best. The scene then cuts to Raust and Narusena in the town later in the day, and Narusena asks him what they should do today. Raust states that they should head to the guild first, and she is a little surprised, as it's rare for them to go to the guild so early in the morning. Raust then takes her somewhere private, and he shows her that they forgot to sell the Hydra's magic crystal the other day, as things were too hectic. He mentions that he would like for them to accept a quest as well, explaining that adventurers can earn money by selling magic stones, but completing quests is also an important source of income. Narusena already knows this, and Raust tells her that if she wants to continue being an adventurer, she will need to gain experience by finishing up quests instead of just taking down monsters. Narusena gets embarrassed thinking about how much Raust cares for her, and she tries to hide her embarrassment. When Raust asks her if something is wrong, the scene then cuts to them at the guild. As soon as they enter, everyone stares at them. Narusena has no idea what the weird vibe is all about, and we notice that everyone is talking about how Raust managed to defeat that Hydra the other day. Raust understands the situation, and he explains it to Narusena after taking her to a corner. He tells her that she needs to be careful, as the news of them defeating the Hydra has spread around, and some bad guys might want to steal their magic stone. An adventuring party then approaches him, and the leader asks Raust if he knows who they are. Raust identifies the leader as Marnell, and Marnell asks him if Raust can talk with him. Raust is a little hesitant, thinking that he might be wary because of their entire gang swarming him at once. Marnell tells his party mates to back off. They do, but they are disappointed that they won't get to hear the story of how Raust defeated the Hydra. Marnell tells Raust that anyone would be curious if they heard that the incompetent Raust defeated a Hydra. Raust then realizes that these people aren't after their magic stones, and Marnell starts things off with an apology. Raust is not sure why he is apologizing, and Marnell explains that all the adventurers in this town were well aware of Margalis's behavior, but they didn't help him out, knowing full well that he was being treated unfairly. He mentions that he just made excuses, saying that this was none of his business, and Raust needed to figure out how to handle himself on his own. He states that on top of this, many of the adventurers even laughed at Raust for being incompetent, and he was no different from them. He knows that he has hurt Raust too much, and he can't be forgiven so easily, but he still asks for his forgiveness. Narusena angrily tells him that he is right, and Marnell asks her what they should do in order to make amends. She states that she has no idea, but kneeling in front of Raust for 3 days might be a good start. Marnell thinks that this is a bit much, but Narusena tells him that 3 days is not enough to make up for the years of suffering that they made Raust go through. Raust asks her not to be like this, as it would only make him seem like the bad guy. She agrees, and Raust tells them that he might have defeated the Hydra, but he is still a flawed healer who only knows how to use heal. He mentions that he is still incompetent, and he asks Marnell to keep calling him that while shaking his hand. Marnell then leaves, asking him to call on him if he needs any help. Afterwards, Raust shows the Hydra's magic crystal to Amidst. She is exhilarated to see it, and she notices that the crystal looks a bit different. Raust tells her that it has been affected by mutation, and he wonders if this will affect the price. She states that it will increase the price by tenfold, and it might be higher. They are surprised to hear this, and Amidst mentions that it should be obvious, as rare things are always priced higher. Amidst then confirms if this really is the magic stone dropped by the Hydra, as monsters need high amounts of mana to mutate, and they can only do it deep in the labyrinth. Raust knows this, but it's a fact that the Hydra mutated in the marshlands, and they find it weird. They think that something might be happening in the labyrinth, as the incident with the half-orc was also unusual. Amidst is worried about this as well, and Narusena wonders if the guild can't do anything about this. Right then, Hans Sam comes there, and he wonders if something is wrong. Amidst tells him that the two of them have a request of him, and he asks them to tell him directly if they want to say something. The scene then cuts to Raust and Narusena in his office, and they report their findings to him. He mentions that these incidents are indeed rare, but they have happened before. He states that the guild doesn't have the time or manpower to look into them right now, and Raust tells him that adventurers might get injured if this is left unattended. Hans Sam states that adventuring is a tough job, and adventurers are aware of this. If Raust is so scared, he should just skip town and go somewhere else. We then see the two of them back at Amidst, and Narusena is angry that Hans Sam asked Raust to leave town. Amidst tells them that this is just the kind of person he is, and they ask him if they know who the president of this branch of the guild is. Raust states that it's Mist, but he has never seen him. Amidst mentions that she has also never seen him, and she explains that he is too old to manage things here, so Hans Sam takes care of things in his stead. Raust thinks that Hans Sam must be quite competent in this case, and she states that he is, but he has high standards for those who work under him, and he doesn't even let go of small mistakes. This is why all employees are afraid of him, and Narina thinks that he does seem like this kind of guy. Raust then asks Amherst a favor, and the scene cuts to them looking through some quests. They check out a number of them, and Narina wants to take a quest to take down a phoenix. Amherst and Raust are not too keen on this, as their party is not suited for this quest. Raust explains that a phoenix is a flying monster, and they need to fight it using long-range attacks, but neither of them are good at those. Amherst mentions that if they want to take down a phoenix, they will need a saber, a wizard, and a healer who can use area heal. This makes a party pop up in their brains, and the scene cuts to them asking Lyra, Sig, and Armia if they would like to do this quest with them. Lyra tells Sig that it sounds good, and she whispers to him that he wants to monitor Raust, and joining his party is the best way to do this. They then ask Armia about this, and she is fine with it, but she wonders if Raust is really fine with forming a party with her, as she did treat him unfairly before. Raust is sure that Armia is not going to repeat this now that she is aware of her mistake, and they all form a party, deciding to tackle the quest the next day. Raust and Narina then head to buy necessary equipment, while Armia and Lyra submit their quest application to the guild. Narina asks Raust where they will be going first. He mentions that they will go to the potion shop, explaining that combining his heal spell with potions can heal burns faster. Hearing this, Narina thinks that he is well learned, and he mentions that it's because he is a healer, but she sadly states that she is not only talking about healing. She then stands at that same place, sinking deep in thought, and she is suddenly hugged by someone from behind. She tries to attack the person, but she recognizes her as Ralma, and she apologizes for the sudden attack. Narina asks her why she is here, and Ralma reminds her that she is a top-notch enchanter and an adventurer, so it shouldn't be a surprise that she is in the Labyrinth City. Narina knows that her father must have asked her to come here, and Ralma mentions that she should have seen it coming, as his only daughter did run away from home. So, of course, he is worried. Raust then comes there, and Ralma is surprised to see that he is the one who made her run away from home. We find out that Ralma is actually Raust's master, and Narina is surprised to hear this. The scene then cuts to them in a restaurant, and Raust explains that he briefly received training from Ralma. He asks Narina how she knows his master, and she mentions that Ralma is friends with her father. Ralma tries to explain things further, but Raust and Narina talk on their own, ignoring her, and she gets mad at them. Ralma then tells Raust that she is now going to talk to Narina about her family, and she asks him to step aside, but he refuses to do this, saying that he and Narina are partners. He mentions that Narina's father might ask her to come back. Ralma wonders if he thinks that he can stop her, and Raust confidently states that he has no problem trying. Ralma then attacks him with a miniature fireball, but Raust dodges it with ease, and she thinks that he has become quite impressive. He tells her that he did suffer a lot because of that magic, and she allows him to stay. Narina then tells Ralma that she didn't run away from home, she just left in a hurry, and she didn't have a chance to explain things to her parents, but she did leave a letter for them. Raust asks her what she wrote in that letter, and she mentions that she wrote that she was going to find Raust, her big brother, and she asked them not to worry. They are surprised to hear this, and Ralma mentions that any parent would be worried if their daughter left, calling a stranger her big brother. Rma then asks her why she left so suddenly, and Narina thinks that she can't possibly tell them that she has had someone keep an eye on Raust ever since that day. When she heard that he was kicked out of his party, she thought that she couldn't miss this chance, so she left home right away. Raust then tells her that it might be better for her to go home for now, even though she might not know how to face her father, as she is going to need her parents' consent in order to become an adventurer. Narina wonders, with teary eyes, if Raust is going to be fine without her, and Raust tells her that this is not what he meant. She mentions that her father might not allow her to be an adventurer and she may never come back. She states that she won't be able to be with him if this happens, and Ralma tells her that her father has no objection to her being an adventurer. He is just worried about her leaving home suddenly and wants to know how she is doing. She mentions that he did ask her to take her back if things are too dangerous, but she will tell him that it's safe. Narina is happy to hear this, and Ralma asks Raust to get her some wine, as she is thirsty. Raust leaves, and once alone with Narina, Ralma asks her if she is upset that Raust acts like he doesn't need her help, even though she left her family for him. She mentions that it's because Raust is too competent, and Ralma states that he was incompetent when he was with her. Narina thinks that this can't be true, as Raust can heal, fight on the front line, and detect traps as well. Ralma mentions that this is only because she and someone else taught him about these things, and Narina states that the thing she admires most about Raust is that he always thinks of others first. She mentions that this is why he went to negotiate a quest for her, and he must be hoping that she gets to fight in a proper party in order to gain experience, so that she will be able to make a living even when he is not with her. She cries, saying that she came to this town in order to help him, but he is the one helping her out instead, and she has just become a burden on him. Ralma tells her that Raust has also changed a lot since the last time she saw him, and it's all because of Narina. She asks Narina to spend some time with him. Later, both Narina and Raust leave the restaurant while Ralma has a drink. After the drink, she thinks that she should get down to business, and we see her in front of a mansion, wondering what Mist is up to. The next day, Raust and his party prepare to leave for their quest, and Sheila gives him a packed lunch. Narina, who saw this, was a little jealous and immediately took the food that was given. And after that they hurried away as a team to complete their first task.